Sounds? Yes, thank you. Yes, hola. Thank you, Paloma, for joining, and thank you us for joining, and thank you for the technical support that we can make possible this live streaming and have a nice audio. Also, thank you also for joining this Art Talks Thursday. For those who don't know Paloma, I want to introduce you. Paloma, she's a Mexican artist interested in the relationship between domestic and political context. In her practice, she establishes a working relation with specific communities. She creates topics of research, asks for collaboration or participation, and addresses domestic issues in the public space with the ultimate purpose of bringing them back to the domestic. She often introduces fictional narratives as means of social, institutional, or political critique, presented in the form of publications, videos, conversations, drawings, and installations directed to different sorts of public, including people outside of culture spaces. She's currently trying to resolve a connection between her Mexican native background and her current living space in Zurich, which until now has proven to be an elusive task. She worked as an art educator immediately after finishing her Bachelor in Fine Arts and the additional professional teaching degree in Monterrey, Mexico. Afterwards, Paloma moved to Rochester, New York, where she worked as a community assistant in a neighborhood of immigrants, teaching and organizing community activities from 2005 to 2010. Paloma lives in Switzerland since 2010, where she pursues her interest in community-focused projects and social-based artistic practices. She has recently graduated from the Master in Fine Arts from Zurich Hochschule der Kunst in 2017, and she just came back from a residency in India, where I hope she will share us how was her experience. Thank you, Paloma.
Thanks, Anne. Yeah. Okay, so thank you all for being here. First of all, this is being streamed, and I want to say hello to my mom and my dad. Hola ma, hola pa, because I know that the family is watching for sure, and family is watching not only because it's me and they believe in me, but because I'm gonna be talking about them. Anne asked me, amongst the things that in how she curated the program, she's asking us, the artists, to not necessarily talk about a piece of artwork. She wants to for us to talk about motives, concepts, notions that we're developing, our practice, our processes of research, of investigation, and this basically how it is constant, or how it really like creeps in all of the aspects of our life. So if you're an artist here, you know that it's not about going to work from 9 to 6. It happens all the time. You read all the time. You meet people all the time. You network all the time. It's really like, even with my family reunions, it is like this. So I decided to talk about 3 works that I've done in 3 years. So this one that you see here, it's a video setting. It's called Christmas Dinner. I did it in 3 years ago exactly. It was December of 2015, beginning of December. And I went to do it to my hometown in Matamoros, Tamaulipas. This is the border of Mexico with Texas, the northeastern part of Mexico. I don't know if you have some knowledge of the history of the border of Mexico with the United States, but it has been historically very problematic in many, many ways. So I wanted to work with issues that began with my family, and I'm gonna show you part of a video. This video is called Christmas Dinner. Let me show you the beginning. This is the title. Then there's a very long quote by Heinrich Böll, which is, you probably know him. He's an author, a German author, and he wrote this. He wrote many stories, but one of them is called Nicht nur zur Weihnachten, It is also a movie, very good movie. I recommend it. But I was reading this story, and it was very inspiring in how he relates a story of a privileged post-war German family, and how it just goes to nothing, and how he decomposes the ritual into into nothingness, into things that cannot exist anymore. So I felt very compelled to talk about my family, my own family, with it. And I'm doing this because I want to show you just a little part of the video. I'm not going to show the whole thing. It's maybe 12 minutes long or something like this. So I'm going to do this with every video that I show. I'm going to show maybe a minute or two. Then I talk about it. If you want to see the whole thing, please just contact me. I'll give you the link, and you can watch it online. I need sound. The what? Okay. Thank you. Mm-mm.
Esta familia se prepara para consumir los alimentos. Compartir abundantemente es algo que sucede de manera natural en su comportamiento. Respeto, afecto, necesarios para mantener el ambiente calmado durante la cena más importante del año. El acto de cenar juntos significa para este grupo un contrato que los compele a preservar la unidad y el apoyo incondicional. Esta familia, como muchas otras, esconde relaciones complejas, consecuencia de largos periodos de moral católica y valores sociales construidos. ¿Qué es importante para ellos? Les preguntamos. Verdad, infancia, sinceridad, amor, Dios, familia. Detrás de esas palabras está la forma en que se cuidan unos a otros. La interacción es una herramienta invaluable que los mantiene vivos en este contexto. Vemos aquí la primera ofrenda a los dioses de la familia, el pastel. Esta es tía Mila, la hermana mayor. Se sienta junto a los niños y se asegura de charlar con todos mientras avanza por la habitación repartiendo el postre y sonriendo sonrisas sentimentales. Es importante sonreír con sentimiento para convencer a otros del propio vínculo con el grupo. Tía Mila fue violada por su tío cuando tenía 12 años. Los padres, los líderes inmediatos, no hicieron nada al respecto. Nunca lo hicieron. Mila raramente menciona esta historia. En la familia no se menciona jamás. El individuo que vemos es el primo Jairo, un miembro más joven.
the images that you're looking at, this is how my Christmas dinners are. They are so good, but very painful in many ways. You're probably imagining that the stories that you were listening are all my family stories, but they are not. This is, at least for me, it was what I wanted to talk about in terms of practice, is that this process of making the video was really interesting for me because I worked with my family. It was the first time that I did this. I've become very involved in the social history of violence, of especially of that border that I was talking about earlier, of the place where I've lived, where I grew up. And I wanted to be part of the protests that were happening 3-4 years ago, but became really, really strong in 2015. So I did several things, things that were more public, things like flyering, things like working with NGOs, things like working with the families of NGOs, doing workshops, other activities. I was there for a bit over a month. And then I decided to come back to smaller, more recognizable, and also maybe more manageable for me spaces, which is the domestic spaces, my own biography and my own history. And I thought that it would be really interesting to reflect on those topics of violence and the things that general people are suffering over there through my own family and through my own history. The stories that you read, that is the narrator is telling in Spanish, these are stories that I collected throughout 3 or 4 weeks of working with my own family and with the immediate community of my own family, which is the neighbors, basically. So let me show you. This is the house where the shooting happened. This is my childhood's house where all my mother has 8 brothers and sisters, so we all grew up there. It was, I mean, it's just one room, but it's bigger than it looks like. Nobody lives there anymore. They slowly immigrated to the United States. So there's that also, that the fact that they have slowly understood that the place where they were was not good enough, not quiet enough, not safe enough. It also impacts on the way that we talk about the house. Right now, this house is looked at as a super utopic place. You know, it's the place of childhood, this place of nostalgia, the place of, oh, those days, remember Christmas, remember that Christmas, and so forth. Right now is the bar. It's a bar where my uncle lives there, and my uncle runs a bar. This is how it looked like. I asked him if I could use it for a week. The whole process of making the setting for the video, it's like this. They designed the setting. They catered. One of my aunts has a catering job, a catering shop. They made the cake. Also, one of my aunts makes cakes for a living, so she made the cake. And they designed the whole thing. We talked about what stories were coming in. We talked about how to, I told them, you know, this video probably is not gonna be showed here in Mexico. It's gonna be shown in Switzerland. So your public is gonna be somebody else. And they made they decided their own customs. They made a sort of persona. You know, I want to be Uncle Heinrich. I told them about the story about Heinrich Böll too, and I want to be Aunt Mila. I want to be this character. So we were playing with that. This is my sister-in-law. She's making this is how it looks, making the setting. We had dinner for 3 days, the same food, the same clothes. But one thing that I can tell you is that this is really how it looks like, without all the the greenery behind. This is really how it looks like. They also made the camera work, the voices. I wrote the story, all this narration that was underneath. I wrote it, but they basically helped me. And yeah, this happened 3 years ago. This is the Christmas dinner. Now how I present it is more like, yeah, okay, it's a reflection where you can see how love and violent situations in life can happen at the same time. And I think it happens in every family or in most of the families. A lot of my friends can relate. I'm sure that a lot of my friends, at least in Mexico, can relate to the colors, to the way of speaking, to how Christmas are. How do you cut the cake before cutting the turkey? It's kind of like really weird, but it's how it is. But I still wanted to keep some of the references to the story of Heinrich Böll, and also because I knew that my public was here. So I was also thinking about establishing some sort of conversation. I'm always thinking, especially as an artist, as an immigrant artist here, I'm always thinking about how can I deal with harsh social situations here. And many times these harsh social situations are happening somewhere else. How do you talk about those things from here? So it's all part of this exploration. This is a work that I did in 2015. Then there is also part of my practice. It's not only videos. I do a lot of publications. And this is something that I brought with me. If you want it, you can. I brought three copies. If you want them, please go ahead. Just know that they're in Spanish. Here they are. This publication, I went back a year after, also in December, because somehow it happens that it's easier for me to come, and it's also the weather is less crappy in December. It's super hot there. It's so hot. In the summer, so I tried to go in the winters. So I went to another city. I went to the city called Monterrey. You can see the name there. And this city it's huge. It's probably the main part of the city is 5 million people, and it's a metropole, like with adjointed areas. It's probably 6 up to 7 million people. The city, as it is in this map, and as it is in the cover map of the publication, it's not really divided. It's a huge municipality of almost 6 million people city. And I worked with this idea that the city, for example, here's divided in Kreise. Mexico City is divided in districts. Other cities in the world, especially the big cities, are divided in districts. I thought, okay, what if, because I'm always working with these fictional aspects, trying to deal with social realities, I thought, okay, what if we divide the city in districts? We divide a city in smaller nucleuses. And then this is where all began. I came there. This is how the city looks like. All that area up there, it's pollution. It's the second most polluted city in Latin America. It's really bad. The pollution is really, really bad. And this is the people that I was working with. It's half of the people that I was working with. Because I've been coming back to that area of Mexico, to the northeast of Mexico, I'm able also to create this network with quite interesting people, all sorts of people, not only artists. And I was working with these NGOs, I mentioned them before, only doing educational programs, in schools also doing educational programs. And I met many different kinds of people, so I wanted to do this not only with artists or designers, I wanted to extend the work to the different perspectives, maybe class perspectives, the situation perspectives of the city. So I talked to several people. I asked them, several people, I mean, there's an engineer, there's an NGO leader, there's a poet there, there's a dentist there, there's an environmental scientist there, there's the lady who cuts my mother's hair also. So this kind of variety. I went to visit them all. I told them, okay, look, I'm doing this this work where I'm imagining that the city will be divided, because say the government decided that it was easier to organize smaller political nucleuses. It makes sense. So it started from there. It was making sense of the fiction thing. So then from there, from making sense of the fiction, everybody came up with a different idea. And there was, there was the creation of, well, one person say the dentist. What if you want to talk about new localized identities, how do you talk about this? Football, of course. Football in Mexico, it's huge. So then let's make the interdistrictal football matches, and they are the different shirts. They call them camisetas, the camiseta amarilla, the yellow t-shirt against the green t-shirts, or the striped t-shirts. So then they all acquire these identities, and then there's problems because of this. These problems, you see these problems all the time happening. People fighting, the fans going crazy. 2 weeks ago, there was a fan killed outside of the stadium before a match, which is, of course, is the epitome of the problems that could happen. But it's something that we included in the writings, in the texts inside this publication. So there was the football thing. There was also the introduction of new migratory identities. Normally in Mexico and a lot of Latin American countries, we are a very relatively homogeneous population of all mestizos, all mixed between our European past and our indigenous past, and we all kind of look alike. We are all Catholic. We are all speaking Spanish, kind of having the same values. And then right now there's a huge, especially in this city, there's a huge Asian immigration. There's Chinese people coming. There's Korean people coming. There's Indian people coming, and they have different levels. You know, they are sometimes they're CEOs of companies, and sometimes they are selling stuff in the streets. Sometimes they are having restaurants. So then there was this issue being addressed. There's the issue of Catholic self and new Catholic identities being expressed. There's also the environmental crisis issue. We are slowly eating our city, eating our mountains, and turning those rocks that you see there. This is the photographer that worked with me. We are slowly eating those mountains and rocks and turning them into cement. So they are basically like the mountains are becoming buildings and streets. So that's a huge environmental damage that we are doing to the city. But the most interesting thing that we did together, the most interesting story that came about, was with the taxi drivers. The taxi drivers were driving me around the city from here to here to here to here for 3 weeks. Because we were trying to make these lines, these new district lines, these new limits, the borders, make them more real or make them more believable. So we were traveling the city to try to make sense of where the lines could be. So I traveled with them a lot. These, by the way, are friends of my mother. She somehow met a guy from a union, and then I met this guy, and then I had a lot of relationship with this union taxi drivers. And then they came up with this idea. They said, if you make this actual district division real, if this would happen, we would be fucked. These are taxi drivers that are not waiting for the clients like here. They have to travel around the city all the time. And what happens in this case, if these taxi drivers would have to cross the new district lines, the new division lines, is that they would have to pay a tax. This tax really exists. Every 3 years, we have to change a plate. And every plate is different. You know, you get a new number every 3 years. And this is basically tax to the government, tax of property and use of the public space, of the public transportation space, basically. So then they said, if you divided this city in districts, we will have to pay more taxes. And if this would fuck up our jobs. So then what if, you know, how do we avoid taxes? Maybe there's pushers, los empujadores. So now these guys, this pusher, new labor that came about from this idea, these guys are pushing cars from one side of the limit of the district to the other in order to avoid, for them to avoid paying the taxes. So this is when all began, the pusher thing. And from the pusher thing, there's many other related articles within this publication. Please have a look, and if you want it, please take it, honestly. We took these pictures. I made them push. I made them, in the beginning it didn't occur to me that it would be a performance. I just thought it's just a picture. I need the picture for the publication. But then because we were obstructing the traffic and the police came, and in the moment when the police came, I thought, okay, this is a performance. We have, there's something happening with this pushing activity that it's so unnatural in a city where pushing happens all the time. That it's that you have to do something about it. So then the pushing activities happened, and we included that in this publication that is addressing, you know, the football thing, the pushing thing, the laws. There's a lawyer helped me write the law of the new redistrictation of the city. There is activist issues, because I was also working with activists. There's also the issue of the eating up of the land, of the cement, all together. And then in the end, what happened is that I printed 700 copies, and they were distributed in different points of the districts, of the lines of the districts. They were distributed in different ways. One was, this is an example, the metro line that goes from one side of the city to the other, but there was also distribution in buses, just as reading material. You know, I would ride the bus, give it away, or leave it in the chair for other people to read. So this is when I got to, by this action, this is when I got to speak to other people about it, to speak to the people that are reading it. The reactions were mostly, this is real, like what is this? Because also the format that we chose is very similar to the format of some newspapers that are giving away in the city. So it's a common thing. It's something that you just take and read. They were distributed also in these kind of places. We talked to the people from the kiosks, and they would sell them there. Also, another way was, this is a very common practice in Latin America. They sell newspapers in the stoplights. So when it's red, they come and sell you stuff. They come and sell you fruit and nuts and your newspaper. So they were selling. I talked to women, and they were selling the newspaper in these stoplights. So what happened with the newspaper over there? After, you know, I worked on making the thing for over a month, and then I came back. And I thought that the most interesting story, the story of the pushers, could keep going, could keep happening. But then, how do you address public space like the one we have in Zurich with the pusher story? How could this be even a little bit believable in such a structured green, everybody has a place to go, everything is very controlled and orderly. How do you do this kind of stuff, this activity? How can you believe that this activity would exist here? So then, okay, the work was not necessarily about creating a new fiction, a whole new fiction like the one that we did in Monterrey. It was mostly about talking about issues where these pushing activities could exist. So the first thing that I do is I go to the Hauptbahnhof and talk to the taxi drivers. And by talking to the taxi drivers, I learn, many things. I get in contact with the unions, with one union. I talk especially with African taxi drivers. They are mostly immigrants. These guys, these three guys that were helping me, I was showing them the thing and telling them about the pushers in Mexico. And they were trying to understand too what I was doing. And we were traveling around the city. It was super expensive for me to pay for them also. To travel around the city, make these lines, these basically Kreise divisions happen, but they are already there, you know. It was not this way. So what I did with the issue of the pushers here was work with them at the same time that I was interviewing an economist, social worker, person from City Stadt, from the Grünstadt, no, Grünstadt Zurich, is that Grünamt? Okay, and also, sorry, I just forgot, an activist. And I learned a lot about the Zurich environmental agenda of the city and how by 2024 they want to make the city the greenest city in Europe. How this means that I don't know if you've noticed that a lot of the streets are lowering their speed limits from 50 to 30. How there's a lot of reconstruction happening in older buildings, how the greener areas are becoming more important, and the areas for, like, they're pushing cars out, which is affecting these guys, and letting like greener areas like bike lanes and stuff like this happen more and more. So there's like a really beautiful view of a very green and environmentally friendly Zurich happening in the next 10 years, but there's also the side where there's gentrification happening, where they are pushing people like them outside of the city, or me, like I cannot afford Zurich. I live outside. I live in Canton Aargau. They, you know, in general, us, direct democracy. We are you know, making, for example, all the prostitutes moved from this area here in Silke. They moved to the Basisanlage. I don't know if you know the place. It's in Altstetten. There's the closing of Caritas stores that were very, very much useful for people, that homeless people, basically, and refugees. These people, I mean, they're not necessarily being pushed out, but they are not able to pay anymore for a place, for a shop in, where is this? Aida Platz. So now they are relocated. They are right now in Altstetten, but near the Schlieren area. So all of these outside areas of Zurich are growing a lot. North Zurich is growing a lot. And this is what happened with these guys. In in the end, because I knew that this flyering thing would not work in Zurich, or at least I tried before with other projects and it didn't work. So what I did was to use the money of the final exhibition of the master degree to pay for an ad in bots. So there's also copies here if you want to take. This work is in bots. There's the story created for the pushers, and there's an ad here in this edition of bots. And this is how it became a public comment on this social issue. But also I made these videos. I could show them to you right now. It's a 2-channel video. The project is called Satire Taxis. I'm just gonna show it to you very briefly because it's kind of noisy. Also, you have to think that it was shown in 2 different screens, and the one thing was happening in one screen and another thing was happening in the other. So it's really, really kind of noisy. So yeah, this is how it looks like. On one side, you see the interviews with the taxi drivers, footage material, and on the other side, there's the whole fiction that's also printed in books. And where's my? And this is how it looks like as a piece, like as a whole thing. When I finish this thing, where's the mouse? Yeah. When I finish this thing, I started becoming very interested in issues of imagination of space and how could these imaginary spaces create different notions and understandings, or at least reflections about the spaces that we inhabit in our daily life. And there's also introduction, or at least for me, it was an introduction of gendered spaces, which are mostly the spaces that are recognized as spaces that are for that have some sort of discrimination. Some of them are for male, some of them are for female. The best example is the example of the WC and the problematic that trans people have in going into this, into a binary system that will only allow them, or morally allow them to go into one sort of bathroom, and then they have a problem if they go to the other. So thinking about these issues, when I finished this work, I started a different thing. This is in India. I just finished this one, so I'm still trying to deal with how to talk about it. You will have to be a bit, it's not the argument, the articulation of the work is not as good as the others that I've had many times and many chances to think about them before. I came back from India a week ago, so this is quite new. I was there for 5 weeks. I came there with this idea of working with gendered spaces. I was there last year too. So I already knew more or less how and why and with whom did I wanted to work. But things change, things happened, and this happened. When I was there, I went to visit my friend Prerana in this university. This is, it's Jawaharlal Nehru University, JNU campus. This is one of the biggest universities in India, if not the biggest, I would say. It's in New Delhi. It has about 7,000 people living inside. It's a walled university. It's a completely gated university, a completely gated academic campus, which means that you have to, there's gates to come in. There's a very clear separation from the city where it is embedded, which is New Delhi. It's an 18 million people city. It's a monster. But then they have this thing in the middle. And this is just one example. I think is the School of Environmental Sciences. This thing looks like this, but it also looks like this. About 60, probably close to 70% of the grounds are green. They look like this. And if you see this, you cannot believe that these are university grounds. I was like, you are coming out from the aulas and from the schools, and then you get to this, and then you can hike. You can actually hike because there are many paths called desired paths, which are the paths made by people coming from one place to the other and not following the streets. They have streets inside. They have an organized public transportation. And when I say public, this is not governmental. This is basically made by people with rickshaws, taking the students from one side of the campus, because it's so big, to the other, and getting, 30 rupees or 40 rupees, which is really almost nothing. So this is my friend Prerana, and the first day that I came to visit her, we started walking. And then also in the first day when I visited her, we found this, which is trash debris, and a very interesting finding of this. This is a statue, an ancient, or at least this is a notion of ancient. Several people, including archaeologists, told me this is ancient. I don't know what this means yet. If this means 1,000 years or 400 years or 200, I have no idea. But it's a stone statue, a broken statue, as you can see, very heavy, of the goddess Sarasvati, which is the goddess of Knowledge. Amongst this debris, trash, soil, mud, plants. We also found the hands. On one of the hands there's a book, and it is showing, now I know, it's a mudra. This mudra is for speaking, and this one is for listening. So she's doing these positions in the way she's, in the original statue, it has a very specific posture, and she's showing this. On one hand, there's the book. On the other one, the book that is for speaking, and then in the other hand, there's the listening hand. And then she has 4 hands, so it's not only, we only found 2, but she has several arms on the body. And I mentioned this because Prerna went kind of nuts and happy about finding this statue. And we took her back. We took a tuk-tuk, which is inside the campus. We took her back to her dormitory. In this campus, the man and the woman, it's all very binary. The man and the woman live separately, very separately. And she was living in one of the dormitories, it's called Koina Hostel. There's about 1,000 women living in there. More than 300 rooms, 300 and something rooms. And this is where mostly where the work with gendered spaces began. The statue elicited a lot of response from the people there. And I learned a lot just by being there and by documenting the presence of the statue within this place, within this hostel. I learned a lot about gender relationships, male and female relations, and but also about the rights as female, the rights within the campus, the rights within society. What I mean is what they are allowed to do, what they are expected to do, and also their fears that they have. So I was introduced into this domestic space for many, many women that were, we brought the statue, it was covered. The guards, there's guards. Of course, it's a gated campus. Every time you go inside a space, there's guards outside waiting for you. You have to, well, at least in the first 2 weeks, there was no problem. We came with the heavy stuff. They helped us bring the heavy statue into the room. And then when you just uncover the statue, it was like, I don't know, like the sun suddenly arose in the middle of the room with 5, 6 women around looking at it. And they all love it. So it also became, for me, trying a quite, to understand, like in a quite intricate way, because their ways are very intricate, very complex, to understand why was this figure so important, and why was it so, why was it eliciting so many smiles and so much, interest. The woman came to the room and they wanted to touch it, they wanted to wash it, they wanted to talk about it. The statue, you can see it in this picture maybe. The statue has plants growing in its body. So they also talking about about fertility, but also about this ecosystem services. This one of the environmental scientists there. There's also, these women are super smart. So these environmental scientists, she comes and starts talking about the fungi and about the the things that are growing in the skin of the stone and the little plants, and how it is also servicing our interactions within the environment. So this happened. Lots of visits within the hostel, within the dormitory happened. Lots of interviews. Also, this kind of learning experiences where I was shown this is a theater student, Vidya. She was showing the positions of the different statues, especially the Sarasvati, especially the one that we had. But within all of this domestic way of talking about female life, there was the administration, the campus, and also the political life of this university, which is it's crazy. I was there, and the statue was there when a series of disturbances after the annual votings happened. Only student votings. There were disturbances, there were beatings, there were like people being stoned, and with stone and sticks, basically, inside the campus from the different groups. From one day to another, I had no access whatsoever to this campus. It was completely militarized outside. This is a picture that I took from the cab outside of the gate, trying to enter, like I did almost every day, and I never had a problem. Now they were asking a bunch of questions. Now my access was prohibited. Now the mobility through campus was very, very censored. Now I had to wear different clothes, more covered. Now it became very difficult to talk to the woman. Like when in the beginning we were received by the guards and the woman with smiles and like, oh, of course, sit down to me. What do you want to know? After this week, they were all suspicious about everything. They wouldn't let me. It became very, very difficult. And after I was there for 4 weeks working inside the hostel, after the 4th week, I thought, okay, we make a screening inside. I made a very simple video of the body of the statue. And I thought, let's put this statue that it's only in this private space, in this domestic space of Prerana, my friend, put it out into the public scrutiny only of the woman inside this building. This is how the building, or at least only one wing of the building, looks like. And we thought of screening in that inner patio, in that space that is forgotten. We also thought of reactivating community spaces. We also thought of this is not the only community space that it's forgotten, because then I learned why. But then when we tried to do this, ask for permission, we were asked, like, okay, you have to send a letter, you have to make a copy of this, take a copy of that, send it to the secretary, then get it signed by the warden, then get it signed by the provost. Provost is a new word for me. I didn't know that all of these hierarchies could exist in this academic system. Then get it signed by the dean, then come back, show it to the guards, let them know, and all of this was, I had to leave a week after. So then, it was clear that they wouldn't allow us. What happened afterwards, it's that we created this zine, and there's also copies for you to take. The zine articulates a lot of the voices that we met. There's short excerpts of interviews. There's drawings from the girls. There's a lot of the talks that we had about access, about mobility of the female body, about the body rights of the city, also about the broken statue. I had a really interesting get together with a woman who is an activist for disabled people. She's an advocate. She's also disabled. She has some sort of mobility disability. And she was just open about this. Like, she saw the statue and she was like, of course, they threw it out because she's broken. And this is what people do with broken statues. She's a female body that we cannot even touch. And then she explained to me, all of these women come to you to touch it because they have lived with these statues their whole lives in temples and in museums, and this is the first time that they get a chance to touch boobs with nipples. And they, you know, it's a body that looks like hers, but hers is completely clothed. It's completely non-showed. You cannot show this body. In the moment that you show this body outside, it's a mess. People become crazy. I also experienced that. You know, you do this and then hell breaks loose. There's also a part where they talk about the untouchability part. You know, I don't know if you know about castes and the untouchables. There's a caste of people that other castes cannot touch, and they have the shittiest and the most dangerous jobs that they can have in this system, and they are dying basically, and they immediately get confronted with this untouchability of the female body, and they of sexual futility too, sexual futility of their own eroticism. There's no words for them to talk about it. It was really, really difficult to come up with these topics when I wanted to know. Even through the statue, you know, the statue it was huge boobs, tiny waist, doing this super erotic pose, and I couldn't talk about this eroticism within. They wanted to talk about something else, so it was me also trying to push this. And we made this, at some point we said, okay, fuck the administration, we have to do this. We made designs. We made 2 copies for every room, because there's 2 women living in the room, in every room. And we went for a whole day giving out, knocking in every door. It was so tiring. Giving them out, explaining them that tonight there would be screenings, but not public, but in private spaces, looking for rooms or for women that would allow us to screen. This is just an example of us giving the zine. And that same night we had our screenings. 2 rooms, 2 women let us had this, not a lot. I was hoping for more. But it had a good call. We had about maybe 10, 12 women per screening. We just put, you know, that's why the picture in the beginning, just a cloth with the projected image. It was just a cloth with a projected image. And after the video, we had a discussion. And the discussion moved around this debate of the access that they have of their bodies, of the interruption and eruption of their own private spaces. There were also raids happening, like the guards came at 3 in the morning knocking on their doors. Imagine somebody coming at 3 in the morning in your room, not even in your house, in your room, with keys, opening the rooms and looking for guests, for uninvited guests. And they were also looking for other, like, smokes and alcohol. So they were talking about the curfews. They have a curfew, 11 at night. Only women. They have to be back. This is how it looked like. Also, we got together with this activist group, which is within the same university. It's called Guerrilla Thaba. And what they do is that after 11, they offer chai for the people that want to stay outside for the curfew. This is organized by women. Even if you see men here, it's a group of women that is doing this. And they allowed us to screen the video, also outside. Beautiful, because you know you have this video in the middle of the woods with plants, really surreal. And after the screenings, we had 2 in different places. The guards came and kicked us out. We had a discussion, but the discussion was different. It was not anymore about these domestic spaces and about femininity and the feminine body, more about their about this encounter with this historical piece, also the encounter with mythology, and yeah, they had a lot to say through this in this moment. We stayed there like until 3, 4 in the morning, and then there was a screening in a gallery, like more artsy looking stuff. I'll show you the video in a moment. And again, I'm just showing a little part of the video. If you really want to see them all, just let me know. I'll send you the link. It's again a 2-channel video. So this is how it looks like. It just keeps going in sort of different chapters. There's others that look like this. And these are all things that happened within this space that I talked about. So yeah, the end of it. As I said, I came back last week. Um, this happened last week, and then yeah, after that there's like a backlash of things that are coming to me through my new friends in Facebook. Um, the Me Too movement right now there, it's wow, it bombed. It just exploded 2 weeks ago, right when I was coming back. And the video became part of this voice for the woman in that space. This is one of the Ajanta. I met her there, um, talking about the virginity tests and women not letting in the temples. Also, women that are menstruating are not let in the temples. Really nasty debates on the media, like really ugh. There's this page, this new page, the Me Too Rising, that I just found out, but it's right now India is really shining in that sense, and there's also this kind of things that they are sending me. Again, because of that relationship with the body of the statue. And yeah, so it was maybe a couple of days ago, something like this. So yeah, I'm at this point where I'm thinking about it still. And that's all I wanted to show you. Thank you very much for listening.
Is it works this one? Yeah, thank you so much, Paloma, for showing us your process of work and your works also. I'm going to start with some questions to mediate, but you're also very welcome to join the questions, please. Yeah, I mean, it's like a very, I mean, I know the work of Paloma for quite some years, I think now. I think we have working first since, I guess, in the virtual residency. Paloma also has been manager of Expo Transculture, which is a intercultural project held every year, I guess. You were also doing the culture management there and inviting artists. I guess you were the very first who invite artists to perform and to do other activities. And in general, I guess the worries in the work of Paloma have been always to deal with the other and connect with the other. It's like a very basic, let's say, worry that your work has. Actually, as I have seen, even in the when we start work, I guess in the very first, also you always want to work with someone else. It's like you're always looking for collaboration and make a catalyst of any subject that comes into. And as you see in the last work she showed us, that is the very recent producer, there is a big research in it. Like the process is very important. She is involved in a very political research, I will say, in which she has to deal with the social, political, cultural, and economical context in which she works. And this is, of course, very natural for someone that has grown in a borderline country. I mean, a land in which was the migration has been a subject of their identity, like it was Matamoros, right?
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, so many of the very first work that you show, which is Navidad, no, Christmas. Yeah, I mean, I also felt very related about. I mean, I guess in any Latin American context, also it's a like a typical portrait of the juxtaposition of these emotional tensions in between families, not how to approach it. And the fiction that you brought in it, it was I could even smell the pinabete, all these trees of the Christmas. And I also was very let's say touched, but at the same time expecting it, that you bring into the fiction this rape aunt and some pedophilia subjects, which is a very super dark in fictional narratives, but probably the only space in which you can allow communities to reinvent themselves. And I find that very appealing. that when building these fictions, you can allow maybe the building of fictions. Maybe the value of building a fiction is the one that brings it brings this subjectivity of reality, and this it has a catalyst aspect in societies. Even in if you saw in the she showed us the process of, for example, something that you could see as a video or as a fanzine like this is a result of a research that becomes a fanzine and becomes a video installation. But in my humble perception, what is more relevant is the political process in which you have to dialogue with the other and confront the reality of the other. And I also, for me, what was very interesting, which is very hard, is the juxtaposition of concepts in different geographies. In other words, the dislocation of meanings. I mean, to translate your work, already you're looking for the translation subject in itself in the cake in the first video, but I see it also as a very a quality that you are looking, to how to translate these meanings in different. It's a very hard work, I think, to achieve as an artist when you're foreigner, when you're immigrant, and you have other cultural references, other cultural context, concepts, situations, processes. How do you bring this that they come together, right? And I don't know if you like to add more things. I mean, I also was in my notes. I of course came in the pushing jobs. For me, for example, it comes this image of the emergent jobs, like people when it's reinventing in communities. There is this economy, informal economy, typical, and then I also saw it as a potential job, like in the informal economy that is always reinventing itself in Latin America. Not like I could totally see it as a job, like you're pushing, you're like a handy person pushing jobs. And I find super interesting that. And I mean, I can continue on, but I would love if you like to join to the questions. She showed us basically 3 works, but as some of that you may know, Paloma, you know that she had a lot of works, and this was very focused in the process. As she mentions at the beginning, I was asking her if she could share us how she produced her work, besides of only see the work in itself. And I think the last one, produced in India, has this very strong characteristic, as you mentioned, that you didn't have yet the distance that one needs to process all the experience and the intensity to live in such a patriarchal context, no? But if you like to join with questions, or you like to add some of the conversation, what it means to you. I mean, I mean, we have also like some copies, limited edition, 3 of the work realized in India, and also 3 fanzines, product of the research project in Matamoros. And we're going to make a bingo. No, I'm joking. No, but if you like to make a question, you're very welcome.
I missed the first project. Okay, should I ask again? Do you go to those places with a specific idea in your mind to realize a project? It can be both as well, or you just go and organically wait for the ideas to come to your mind and then follow this spontaneous.
It's half and half.
Half and half.
The 3 of them were, I got grants for them, so I already had I had to propose an idea, and I had to get money to make all of this. But in the end, it never happens like you wish.
Doesn't end up exactly as you promised them to be, but they are shaped by, because when you work with other people, random people, and people you just met on your way, the project shapes on its own probably. And in the result, you somehow organize your thoughts and. Okay.
Yes.
Thank you. Yeah, I think more than taking it as a loss of control, I would say allowing the project to let it go in itself, no? That you had this quality that you start with a concept, but the circumstance totally shape it and bring it, because you cannot control what happened. I mean, as you mentioned, when doing this documentation of the pushers, suddenly it become a sort of performatic action, like a catalyst in the street. It was no longer your documentation of your project, but it was like you know, it's not only these projects, you know, that have repercussion not only in your habitat, in your circle of people or so, but suddenly they become a social catalyst. And I think the projects that Paloma starts often had this aspect. I mean, she also looks to engage public, actually, which is a very positive quality, I think, today. I think when producing art, it's very necessary to have this empathy towards public. Yeah.
Thanks.
More question? Más questions?
I cannot see.
Yeah. I came late, but I found very interesting this interaction with those girls. And could you precise for me, were they students?
Yes.
At this university, and this room was the campus.
That place is this one. It's the place where they live.
But it's
Hostel.
on the campus.
Yes, inside the campus. And this is only one tiny organ of the whole organs that happen inside the campus. So there's also male hostels, male dormitories, and females, and places where the academics with family lives, places where the service people live. Yeah, mostly that's it.
And how did you come to choose this place?
It happened spontaneously, because we found the statue, and then I got involved with what was happening inside there.
And do you think that in this generally in those academics and that they are studying different things, those
Yes.
girls?
Yeah.
Do you think there is a big difference on the photos? It looked like so. Then between the people we met here at the ZHDK and during the summer schools from India,
how they look?
No, how they, they wear those camp, for instance, and those architects and
Yes.
Gitangali and
Yes.
so.
From the ones that we met, yes, I think they are a bit different, but it's also, I think, the place, that space allows for different things to happen. It's as I said, I was at one day I was at 3 a.m. out screening a video, but this is only one thing that happened. There were days when there's a professor from the right-wing party making a speech, and he's having 50 students around, 50 other people, and then it becomes a debate. And this is, it's not a place like this. This is, what would be I don't know what the equivalent would be. Like really in the middle of nowhere, in the middle of this courtyard, with grass and plants around. There's really, it looks like it's nothing, but then it activates at some point. So yeah, there's all sorts of interactions in this university that is very different than here.
So,
for sure.
Would you say that things happen more spontaneously there?
For sure. There's also it's easier, like the people just allow for things happen more spontaneously, and there's less. It's very chaotic. It's so then you just deal with the cows and go with the flow. Yeah.
Yes, thank you for your question. Yes, like that actually, that's what I was mentioning before about this location of working in different contexts with different references. A very hard thing, actually. I see you as a sort of guerrilla catalyst, like a double agent, because you went inside these dorms, and then you're like giving this propaganda, feminist propaganda, basing a very poetic gesture that is finding an archaeological piece of a symbolically femininity, a divine femininity. So I also see a very honest poetic approach in building narratives, in building as a puzzle, like not only because the archaeological piece that you take as reference is a subject that is not a coincidence, also that is really something needed to be spoken in such a context of repression. No, I mean the Indian context probably has like 1,000 of Jerichos, as you mentioned it, and the woman is not in the highest position, let's say. So I see it like this very. I think this is a very authentic, organic, poetic dimension of building narratives in between the experiences, that you had to just things let pass, like things let that things go spontaneously, and make sense of it, and take the opportunities. And this is also work that has to do with communities, like when you work with a community and you have to adapt yourself and just build something in the terms of that community.
Yes.
I don't know. That's my impression as a spectator. But yeah, I don't know, how is it for you?
Right.
It takes time to process it, no? So just
yeah. It's not easy.
Yes.
Yes. No. No. Yeah, it moves amongst the domestic spaces and private.
It's the guerrillero inter-propaganda.
No, propaganda, no.
No, nothing to offend. Just like to put it in another value, it was illegal. I mean, technically, they didn't allow you to do such a thing, but you had to do it, because it has sense to you. So,
but
congratulations for that.
It had sense for them. I mean, it's also, yeah, it was not only me.
Yeah, I guess that was just a glimpse of all the experiences you had in India, like in your recent trip. And I wonder, what are your future plans? Like, what are you looking for? Because you're going to Mexico soon, right?
Yeah, I'm going to Mexico. I'm gonna go work with this guy. His name is Javier. We have a project together. We're gonna go destruct a house, like just destroy a building for different reasons, historical reasons. But
so just to contextualize, Paloma has been working in a collaboration with this Mexican architect and artist, and have built several exhibitions already, and projects research base with him. And this is maybe, which number is it of your research project with him? Third
3?
one. Yeah, the third one. Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, I'm gonna be back in December. That's the plan.
So we expect some documentation of a destruction and the process of letting go old houses, and the emotional aspect of the houses.
Yes.
Well, I don't know if you'd like to add something else.
No, that's it. Actually.
Yeah, I don't know, guys. If you have other question here, no. Well, so thank you so much.
Thank you very much for listening.
Thank
really.
you, Paloma.
I know it's late.
So muchas gracias, Paloma. Thank you so much. You're very welcome to join the bar at here. We have some drinks. And next talk is Brazilian Zurich Artist Prize Matthias Ringberg, who recently won the Performance Art Award like 2 weeks ago, the Swiss Performance Art Award. So thank you for coming. Thank you.